Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning into this Sprintax video, your YouTube questions answered, and this is part 3. My name is Anna Fitzpatrick and I'm an account manager here at Sprintax. And the aim of today's session or today's video is to go through some more of your questions that you've asked on our YouTube videos and hopefully address your queries. Before we start, as always, because it's tax we're talking about, we generally have to start off with some type of a disclaimer. And this presentation is aiming to give everyone a general understanding of tax as it applies to non-resident international students, scholars and professionals in the US. So it's important to keep in mind that each individual has their own unique tax position and is responsible for their own tax determination and tax compliance. But let's jump into some of the questions that were asked on our YouTube videos. The first question comes from one of our e-filing videos and it asks, I've filed the e-file. Is it just for the federal taxes? Do I have to mail from my home country to the US the state taxes? Is that logic? So for state returns, yes, they will need to be mailed. You will get a tax pack on the state tax side with detailed instructions outlining what to do, what to print, sign, mail, what to include, and where to send your state returns to. I know this individual mentioned that they have e-filed, but just to mention around federal e-filing obligations and eligibility. So on the federal side, it will depend on your circumstances. If you are eligible to e-file your federal return and your e-filed return is accepted, you will not need to mail your federal return. If your e-file return is rejected, you will need to mail it. And then if you are not eligible for e-filing, you will need to mail your federal return. The next question was from the video around step 2, getting to know you. And it says, I have correctly filled step 1, but continue to respond. I have skipped a bit. Please fill the fields in red so you can move on. So to try and troubleshoot this, please log out and clear your cache and cookies and try logging in with another browser. And hopefully that will fix the issue that you're encountering. If not, please reach out to our support email, hello@sprintax.com. Next question is from a J1 au pair, and it comes from the non-resident US tax overview for J1 au pair participants. And it says, since an au pair does not have a W2, what should be selected in the income document tab? This is a good question. So if you select your visa type as a J1 au pair on step 1 residency on the Sprintax questionnaire, when you get to the income section on Sprintax, it will allow you to select that you have au pair income not reported on an annual tax form listed above. So if you have a W2, of course, you can select that. But in most cases, au pairs will not receive an income document. So you'll be able to say yes to the question asked here. And then you'll be able to outline the income that you received, whether that's through a payslip, your bank statements, invoices, or simply based on the income that you received during the tax year. And also important to keep in mind that as an au pair, you would generally not be required to send any supporting documents or supporting income documents with your federal and state tax return if you did not receive any. Next question is coming from step 6, living in the US or your state taxes. And it says, should I list the places I stayed in while traveling? For example, I was working in Maine, but went traveling for 2 weeks after. Do I have to list all places I visited because I was only a tourist in those places? Yes, you should outline all visits to and from the US, both at the step 1 residency step and also at the step 6 state taxes stage of the questionnaire, because the amount of days you spend in the US can impact your residency on the federal side and also on the state side. So it is important to capture all visits. Next one is another query around e-filing. I'm super confused because it seemed like the system should have done e-filing, but I did not get any email about it or anything. It seems like I have to send a physical letter to the IRS, which defeats the purpose of using Sprintax entirely. Did I by accident select the option to use physical forms instead? If so, is there a way to pick the e-filing option after having erroneously clicked on download for the physical documents? So Sprint Tax is really a self preparation tool that will assist you with preparing your non-resident tax returns. We do offer federal e-filing with the IRS if you're eligible to e-file your federal return. If you are, you'll be given that option, similar to how it's shown in the screenshot here, where you'll go through e-file authentication and ideally successfully e-file your federal return. But as I mentioned, the IRS do have certain limitations, meaning that certain individuals are not eligible to e-file their federal return, and such scenarios are outlined in our e-filing blog. Unfortunately, this is outside of the hands of Sprintax. This lies in the hands of the IRS and relating to their eligibility for e-filing for non-residents. So if you are not eligible to e-file, you won't be given an option because it simply wouldn't be accepted by the IRS. So if you're not eligible to e-file your federal return, you would need to print, sign, and mail your return following the instructions outlined in your Sprintax federal tax pack. And then on the state return side, as I mentioned, these will still need to be mailed if they're prepared on Sprintax. Another question relating to step 6, living in the US or your state taxes. What if I never left the US at all during my studies? I can't move past the steps because it's forcing me to enter that information. So firstly, important to mention that when you're on living in the US or your state taxes, these dates will relate to what you entered on your first step residency on Sprintax. So sometimes we have students that will say they can't edit a date on this stage, but the error is actually coming from what they entered on step 1 residency. So if there's an issue that you're not able to change something because of what you entered on step 1, please go back and review your step 1 dates and entry and exit dates and see if anything needs to be updated, and this will update your state dates. And then in terms of the exit date for 2023, in this case, as the state residency step is just concerned with 2023, it will have an exit date of December 31st, 2023 here, even if you may still be in the US into 2024, for example. Then one of the last questions for today's session, or actually the last question, it's from the video, can J visa participants file a US tax return with TurboTax? And it asks, as a J1, I did file taxes with TurboTax. It did ask if I was a non-resident, to which I ticked the box because yes, I am a non-resident. Am I in trouble for this? I just filed now. So if you are a non-resident for tax purposes and you filed using TurboTax, you would have filed a 1040, which is a resident return. And if you're a non-resident, you should have filed a 1040 and/or. So if that is the case, you're a non-resident and you filed using TurboTax, you will need to file an amended tax return, which is using Form 1040X, the amended US individual income tax return, and Sprintax can help with this. So if you look at the screenshot here, you'll be able to select the tax year, tick the box that you want to correct your 2023 or other tax year that you already sent to the IRS, and then go in and complete the amended return questionnaire, and the system will generate your amended return for you. But just important to mention one more time, for non-residents for tax purposes, you cannot use TurboTax or any other resident software because that would be a case of misfiling and would require an amended return. But with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into this video. For anyone who sent their questions, hopefully I've answered them. Also, anyone who might be tuning into this video, hope you found it helpful. We appreciate everyone sending in their questions. I know as we're making this, the deadline has passed, but if anyone has yet to complete their taxes, please do it as soon as possible to avoid additional fines and penalties. But thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you on the next video.